Miami Heat, they've ultimately finished as the number one seed, 53-29. But it looks like they're going to be running it back. I know they're engaged in potential talks about Mitchell and maybe Durant, but do they need to make a move like that to stay as one of the top three seeds in the Eastern Conference?
Um, here's the interesting thing to that is the answer to that is no, because they've already answered that this year. I think the Miami Heat can always play better than their roster. Spoelstra will always, he's a coach that you can give credit for getting the absolute most out of his players. So even if they don't get Durant and they've filled out the roster in another way, like the combinations that he gets will get them far enough. So it can happen. I think I'm thinking more. I'm thinking more in terms of postseason, I guess, when I think of them, because I think the regular season success can come with the 100% effort, with the defensive genius that is Eric Spoelstra. But the question marks that I'll pose for them is kind of what you said, is the same, running it back. Continuity, I think, is definitely important. Like, this feels like a relatively new roster. You got guys like Max Strus coming into a major role, Gabe Vincent as well. And you just are starting to incorporate Kyle Lowry in major ways and big moments. So there's still like room for growth through continuity. But I think there's also room to grow in the wrong direction too, because Kyle Lowry is still not answering questions about his health at this stage of his career. And if there is any answers, it's to say that he's probably just about up. Maybe he has a Chris Paul renewal, but it seems like that's a little bit gone right now. Tyler Hero, you're not going to discredit the major work that he put in throughout the season. Averaged 21, 5, and 4. And I guess we talk about injuries, whatever. Then he went to 12.6, 4, and 3 in the playoffs. So do we look at Oladipo then? That's the major change in like getting him healthy? Maybe. It's possible. Butler stays in his prime. Like, the way that he's playing right now, it's unreal. I hope so. I love Jimmy Butler. But when does it end? And it kind of feels like with guys like him and DeMar DeRozan, who are kind of hitting that sketchy part of your career where maybe things fall off, maybe they start to decline, maybe they both stay just as good. But that's a question where I can go in the wrong direction. There's just a lot in the air for me to expect that in terms of their talent and the people in their locker room right now, that they're going to get a major boost compared to other teams in the East, that I think there's a lot more potential for them to grow. That's where I think I stand with the Heat. I know that they can do it in the regular season, but do they have the ceiling raisers on their team to go further than what they did last year? I can't answer yes to that right now.
Yeah, I'm on the same. I think obviously we know what we're going to get out of them in the regular season. They're still going to be a top 4, top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. It's just when it gets to the playoffs. And I remember we discussed before about playing through Bam Adebayo more. If they're not going to be able to make any big moves in the trade market or anything, I think that's something they have to look to do more consistently throughout the season, and then be able to rely on it when they get to playoff time. Remember, I talked about that great game he had when they beat the Celtics in game 3, was it? The first game over in Boston. And they played through Bam, and he had an absolute monster night. But they didn't do it again for the rest of the series. They ultimately lost it in 7 games. But you made the point that they can't just decide to do that come playoff time. They have to do it more consistently, and hopefully he can be healthy for a larger part of the season this year. He obviously had struggled with some injuries last year, and they have to find a way to play through him more, because it can't just be Jimmy Butler ball come playoff time. They need to have other options. And we've seen, unfortunately, Hero have shortcomings when it gets to the crunch time. But that's where they have to make improvements within the roster that they've got if they're going to just run it back. Because don't get me wrong, I don't think they should give up the 7 or 8 first-round picks that apparently Danny Ainge wants for Donovan Mitchell, and God knows what they might have to give up to try and get Kevin Durant. So they're still in a good spot if they want to run it back, but they've got to make some little adjustments to be in a position to remain competitive with the likes of the Bucks, the Celtics, 76ers, and likely a couple more teams.
Thanks for watching Coast to Coast on YouTube. For full episodes, check out the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for all the best hot takes, subscribe to the Coast to Coast YouTube channel below.